Hey, Spiralers, welcome back. In case y'all didn't know, Gina and I are both mindset coaches. And so a lot of times people ask us how we are constantly having topics or like why we always know what we want to talk about. And that's because so much of what we want to discuss comes up in our coaching calls.
Yes.
And of course, our own personal lives and our shares and stories with each other. But primarily through working with our clients, we hear some of the most common limiting beliefs, patterns, and blocks. And so today's topic was, why don't we actually share some of the most common limiting beliefs we work with between our clients?
Yes, and ourselves.
Yeah.
Because they all
They're the
tend
same
to
ones.
boil down to some of the same themes. And ultimately, they actually all boil down to the same thing. But we do want to talk about the way that these things show up, what they sound like, how you can maybe identify that you're going through them. And we want to share with you what you can do. And, you know, it's been so interesting in my work because I love working with the mind and doing the mindset stuff. But so much of what we've started to also move into, especially through my breath work that I do in the somatic work, is the connection to the mind and the body and the way that it shows up in our bodies and how that manifests into our mind. So I'll definitely touch on some of those angles as well as we approach these. But I think it's been actually so healing for both of us to work with so many people and ultimately everyone inside of our containers to see other people going through the same things. So the intention behind this episode is for you to feel more seen and to help you to solve some of these perceived problems.
Perceived problems. I love that you said it that way, Gina, because when we work through these beliefs with our clients, they begin to see that there's nothing actually blocking them besides themselves.
Yep.
And so that's a foundational crux to both of our works, which is that what we are being blocked by is not in the external world, but is within the internal world. And that's good news. That's such great news because we can't manipulate the outer world to be the way that we need it to, although we try, but we can shift the way we perceive and experience our inner world, which of course changes our experience of the outer world. So thank God all problems are inner problems because we can work on those.
Yes.
And so let's just start kind of like banging down the list of some of the most common limiting beliefs.
Let's
So
do it.
Gina and I came up with these yesterday, and these might not sound exactly like the ones you have in your mind, but they will be similar. So these are thematic, but one of the ones that we hear a lot, and it may not come out in this exact sentence, but it's like a sense. So just feel within your body if this feels true for you. But I have to work hard, read, suffer, in order to have a good life.
Yeah. So some of the ways that it shows up is not allowing yourself to rest. It's feeling like you need to always be productive and on. It's you feeling like you're never doing enough, right? Those are all kind of different maybe ways or different faces it might have.
Yeah, and of course this is a scarcity-driven belief because it presupposes that you don't already have a good life.
Yes.
You have to work for it. And so what it essentially suggests to your brain is that you are not in the good life. The good life is not available to you, but only through excessive effort can you achieve the good life. Now, interestingly, if we were to get curious about what good life is, right, what would most people say?
To be happy.
Yeah, to be happy, peaceful, at ease. But those are the exact things that you were in direct contrast with in order to receive your good life. So it's so funny and counterintuitive that you are working literally energetically against the experience you're trying to create through this belief.
Yeah, you actually won't even let yourself be happy.
Yeah, this belief blocks you from what you're trying to get.
Yes, yeah. And I think the suffering mentality of like, oh, I've got to suffer to have a good life, it's important to also see where it comes from. And I think especially with a lot of our parents' generation, they did suffer a lot through their life. Generational suffering, but even just, with our parents, they like immigrated here. There was a lot of hardships for them to just exist and be able to quote unquote survive and provide enough for us. And so when that's modeled for you, then of course you're going to believe that you have to have that as well. There's also this weird guilt that I think people have if their life does feel too easy. Like as soon as you start to feel good, it's like we start to then recreate the chaos and the suffering again because it feels so uncomfortable to feel good because it just feels so foreign to us.
Yeah, of course. It's so foreign. And like you said, our parents obviously modeled for us a lot of suffering, especially
Yeah.
immigrant parents. But even deeper, potentially, than that is this eons long religious conditioning that is steeped in guilt and shame.
Oh my gosh,
And
yes.
this idea that working is virtuous and idleness is bad, or that it's sinful. And so
Lazy.
lazy, and that being sinful as well, which is so interesting because lazy didn't mean bad until maybe like 250 years ago. But anyways, that's a different story. But there's a lot of religious conditioning, which by the way is a through line, whether or not you were raised religiously, because I wasn't really raised in a religious household, you were, yet we still receive these messages because it's steeped into the
Yes.
culture that
Yes.
we have to suffer in order to create a good life. And ultimately that if you are not suffering, that you're somehow like cheating, or like you're getting away with something you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
have to recreate that chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just interesting that this belief is, I hear it in so many different ways. It can also sound like I can't rest until,
Yes.
right? Blank, blank, blank. Or it might be why you're so attached to finishing or doing things perfectly because you think that rest is on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
But what we actually ask our clients to introduce themselves to, or what we introduce to them, is a whole new paradigm where they are moving within the good life rather than to the good life.
Mm-hmm.
So, good life is not your reward for your hard work. Your hard work is a byproduct of you integrating the good life in your current present moment. And the good life, of course, you have to define on your own terms. It means different things to different people. But again, believing that you need to attain a good life is scarcity. And so, what if you were able to believe that you already have a good life? How would that energetically change the way you take action?
Yeah, and I think it's important to define again like what a good life is, because when you start to redefine success for yourself, you start to first of all unpack what you are believing or what you're kind of unconsciously believing success is, and then you get to unpack like, is that really what I want? Because I think for so many of us
Mm-hmm.
it's working hard, making money, chasing certain things, and when you really wonder like, do I want that life? Like, what else is there? I think that's the other thing too, is a lot of people don't know that there's other options, like other than just suffering and just working hard. But for you and I both, and for so many of our clients, I love the part where we get to redefine that. And so if success is loving myself and enjoying what I'm doing, I can realize that suffering doesn't exist in there.
Mm-hmm.
Suffering would actually be failure,
Yeah.
right? It's
It's
like,
the antithesis of the good life.
exactly. And so if I'm realizing that having a good life is me being in joy and me being in happiness and in playfulness, then suffering can't be in the room. And so it gives you then permission to have fun, to have playfulness, and to be more experimental. But it is definitely a paradigm shift, but we encourage you to try it. Just try it
Mm-hmm.
and literally just see what happens. I love when we get our clients to just try. You've tried this way
Yeah.
for long enough. And where has that really gotten you? Let's just experiment and see what happens if I actually just try to prioritize being happy now without needing to have certain markers first. And let me just see what happens. And you will be surprised.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I've really eliminated this I need to suffer or I need to work hard to have a good life, because I realized that my good life would be the one where I'm not actually suffering.
Exactly.
So I was like, "Oh, interesting. I'm just going to ease my way into it." And there are still moments where I feel like someone's watching me, right? It's like
Mm.
kind of that inner I don't know, God that was fearfully like mongered to me, right? Like
Hmm.
we kind of learned that God was a punishing force, not a benevolent being.
Mm.
At least I did. So I almost feel like I'm gonna get in trouble for like not doing anything. Like last week, I went into a sunny spot in the park at 3 p.m. and I was like, I'm just here right now. And it felt like I wasn't allowed to be. And I was like, wow, that's so much of my internalized capitalism saying that I need to be at work until 5. Like,
Yeah.
like would I be feeling better if it was 6 p.m., right? And that's so arbitrary too, because times are thoughts. But anyways, that's a huge one. Can you welcome the idea that your good life is actually the absence of suffering, and therefore your approach to a good life is actually keeping you in contrast with the thing that you want to experience? Your belief itself is keeping you from that experience.
Yeah, something I want to just add in. I talked to one of my clients whose parents really suffered a lot and worked so hard. And in the end, life was very absent of joy. And so now, of course, this person, again, being modeled this, believes I can't just be happy. Like I do have to suffer to have a good life. And then it's looking at like who modeled that for you and would
Yeah.
you want their life?
Oh, yeah.
Like if your parents did model that and you believe I got to do the same thing they did, but you look at their life and you realize I don't want that life, then that's usually like a brain exploding moment of, oh, I'm repeating the steps of creating the kind of life I actually don't want. And so it can kind of help you to release this grip of this is the way that I should do it, because why would you want to repeat and copy someone's life that you wouldn't actually want to live?
Yeah, it's like, am I the generational trauma? Yeah. Yeah, I had a client who realized that recently. I asked her to describe her parents' relationship to work, and she was like, oh my God, like it's terrible. And,
Yeah.
you know, she was so descriptive and then was like, "Do-na-na-na-na." It's like, you like realize like, oh my God, I'm recreating the exact same thing. That's
Yes.
interesting. And I said, that's perfect that you're realizing this because you're going to be the one to break it.
Exactly.
Okay, another belief that comes up so commonly, and again, it may sound different in your brain, but same idea. I have to show up a certain way in order to make an impact or in order to be accepted.
This is just perfectionism. That's it.
Well, it's also self-rejection.
Ooh, oh my gosh. I could talk for like 10 years on this. Okay. Yes. That is you self-dismissing and self-rejecting before somebody else can.
Ooh, say more.
Say more.
I love that.
I do this a lot. A lot. And, you know, it's coming from a really beautiful intention, which is ultimately to protect me and to save me from experiencing pain because, you know, my parents often rejected me and dismissed me. And so because that was so painful growing up, like I remember I did this with you one time. I recorded this solo episode. I don't remember which episode number it is, but I had been resisting doing this for so long. And I kind of had the same thought. I can't record this until I'm better. I can't record this until I have a more good topic. I can't do this until I improve, whatever. And so, you know, Sam kept encouraging me, just do it and, you know, whatever. And as soon as I finished it, I recorded it like 4 times. But I sent it to you. And the first thing I said was, I already know it's not good. So just listen if you want, but I already know it's bad, but whatever. It's like fine. And so again, that is this self-dismissal, self-rejection to protect you from feeling the rejection from this other person. But what's so funny about that, actually not funny at all, but ironic, I guess, is that the pain that you feel from rejecting and self-dismissing yourself hurts way more than somebody else rejecting you.
And it makes
Way
it
more.
impossible for you to even feel accepted by me.
100%.
Like, even if I was like, oh my God, this is fucking incred, like, so good, like, you killed it, do it again. You just be like, you're just saying that. Like, like it doesn't even matter what I say. Like, I could be giving you the most warming, accepting energy, but you've already rejected yourself. And so, interestingly, this belief, I have to show up a certain way in order for people to accept me, keeps you from acceptance.
Yes.
Because you are not accepting yourself. When you have to show up a different way or a certain way, what you're saying is not me like this, me a different way. You've already rejected yourself. And so any acceptance from others will not feel authentic because they're frankly accepting not the authentic you anyway. So you're not going to feel accepted. You may be a part of a group, right? But you will just be in that group without actually feeling a sense of belonging. And so you keep yourself with this limiting belief from the acceptance you deeply crave. Because until you can deeply accept who you are and not need yourself to show up in a different way, only then will you feel truly accepted.
Yeah, that's so true. And this is a really hard one for people. So just know that if it doesn't click and integrate immediately, it's okay. I mean, we still go through cycles of this as well. But I think what I teach my clients is your only job is to show up. Just show up. And actually, writers say this all the time too, where they'll say, all you have to do is sit down in a chair and start typing or start writing. You just have to start. You just have to show up. And that's ultimately how I've been able to get to where I am now with doing this with you, with, you know, making these shifts in my life is because I'm not saying I need to show up in any certain way. I just have to show up. And that's it.
Yeah, because needing to show up in a certain way it's so harmful and damaging. And God, it's so rejection filled. And like, why would you want to show up after rejecting yourself?
Okay, so I actually said this to my client yesterday in a voice note. where it'd be kind of like if this is such a weird example, but follow me. Let's see if this works. If I kept saying for you to come and hang out with me, but every time you come and hang out with me, I like say mean things to you, and like I say like you why did you wear that? Like, why did you do that? And you should show up a different way. Like, why would you want to come and hang out with me then? Right? It's like when you keep on setting an environment where every time you quote unquote show up, you are self-rejecting. Like, why would you ever want to come? And so it's about you realizing that the setting that you keep on creating, that's actually what's stopping you from showing up. It's not that you're not good enough. It's the setting. And so same thing with a friend. If I keep inviting you over to my place, but every time you come over, I'm just saying mean shit to you all the time or making you feel like you shouldn't have worn that or shouldn't have acted like that, you're probably not going to want to hang out with me. So much of pretty much all of these examples common, limiting beliefs are really going to boil down to the way that you treat yourself and the inner dialogue. And
Yeah. I'm glad we talked about that. Yeah, this is such a painful belief because it's like telling a kid like be different. And then, we will love you.
Yeah. And like, why would you want to come? And so I think the belief is often that, like I'm not good enough. But it's not that you're not good enough. It's that you're not creating a safe space for you to just be.
Yeah.
So it's not that you need to become more skilled at anything. It's that you just have to create more safety and acceptance for yourself to just be in whatever form that there is. So it can just be helpful to externalize this to someone else. I think the example I gave my client was like, if you went to go get your hair cut by this person and every time you went there, they told you how terrible your hair was, like you also wouldn't want to go get a haircut. But that doesn't mean you don't have good hair. It just means that the environment that you keep putting yourself into is creating a lack of safety and a threat in your body that your body will naturally want to avoid. And so anytime we have that kind of threat in our bodies, it's a sign that your nervous system is working. So it's also not to villainize when we feel like we want to avoid doing certain things, because I certainly did that, and not feeling like I was good enough to show up on things like this or different interviews. It's not that I was not good enough. It was just that my body was experiencing a threat, which is good. That's not bad. I want my body to experience or to be able to tell me when it perceives a threat. However, it's my work to go beyond that to actually notice it's actually not a stress or a threat. And how can I create more safety so that it feels okay to be here and to be myself? And this is a very incremental journey, I will say.
Very incremental journey. And oftentimes this belief I have to show up a certain way is really related to what you believe you need to show up like emotionally. Right? Like for me, it was basically like I have to always be happy. Like,
oh my gosh, that was huge for you.
Yeah. And so of course I'm rejecting every single other experience of an emotion I've ever had,
right.
Which then doesn't allow me to show up authentically and to feel accepted. Because imagine if I only hung out with you every single time I was happy. Am I really being accepted for the fullness and wholeness that I am? Because I will just say right here, right now, I did not feel deeply loved and accepted by Gina until I showed up in like my deepest, darkest sadness. And that was okay with you.
Yeah, well, frankly, you did show up perfectly in the beginning. Like, you didn't want to be around me. Like, you avoided me all the time when you would have these, downward spirals or whatever you want to call them. And what's so funny is that in your pursuit to try to be more accepted and loved by me, I actually felt unloved because you were avoiding me.
I was literally creating the experience of non-acceptance.
Yes. Of not just yourself, but me too.
Yeah.
And so it was actually backwards. And so I remember, when you started to open up so much more, and I did accept that, you were like, wait, so feeling your feelings is good. And it's like, yes. And again, it was incremental for you because you didn't have safety, because the way that you showed up in emotions earlier in life, it wasn't held and accepted. And so, of course, again, our nervous systems are going to have a response to when you show up with emotion because it's trying to protect you. But it doesn't make it right. It just means your nervous system is working, and we can actually expand the windows of tolerance to be able to be with that. And again, we can do that in a titration form, which you and I did. And I feel like I will just say that you have come such a long way, because now you don't have to wait. Because before it was kind of, I would say phase one was feeling the feeling, sitting with the feeling, and then maybe just talking about it after you processed it.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Yeah.
I was like, so last week I was feeling terrible, but like, whoa, I learned so much. And like right now I'm totally okay. And then, the next phase was like, I think I'm not feeling good right now. Where like, I'm not really fully admitting it, but I'm like suggesting that maybe I'm not feeling good.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's okay. And then like phase 3/4 is me just being like, I literally hate my life right now and I feel terrible and I don't really want to be here at this moment. And you're just like, that's also okay. And I had never known what deep acceptance was until I showed you the parts that I didn't want to accept.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this I believe I have to show up a certain way in order to X, right? It keeps you from experiencing that X, whatever that is.
Totally. Yeah. Because I think in the context of like, let's just say following your dreams and you want to show up for your people or show up online in a certain way, again, you believing there has to be some criteria is actually what will stop you from showing up at all, which then actually robs the people of the experience of you. And so, yeah, my mantra has just been my job is just to show up. And that's helped me a lot. So
It really is.
I hope it helps you.
That was so good. Okay, let's move on. Something I tell my clients all the time, and even my general listeners, you spiralers, is that whatever state of being we continue to be creating and reinforcing over time is ultimately driven by an unconscious belief. Like,
Yes.
why do we keep creating that? Why do we keep behaving that way, right? Our behaviors are dictated by our inner life. And so doing this work of getting curious about the limiting beliefs is so important, because to insult the behavior over and over is to look at the wrong place, right? Like if I looked at a formula that was very simple, X plus Y equals Z, to look at Z, which would maybe be my behaviors and my results, would be so pointless. Like Z can only be what it is because of X and Y is thoughts and feelings. So one of the feelings, of course, we deal with a lot with people is overwhelm, distressing anxiety. And I find that comes from this sneaky belief, which is that if I rest, I'll fall behind. Some version of that. It doesn't have to be if I rest. It could be like if I don't X, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, what's hiding in there is this I will fall behind situation.
Yeah.
Like that there is some race, and if you don't keep up the momentum, the pace, like you're out of here. Like something bad happens. And so you are running. You are constantly fueling this anxiety throughout your body. Your body may even be breaking down. You may have symptoms of chronic illness because adrenaline running through your veins, that frequently is a very exhausting thing for the human body. Good in small doses, but not every single time you receive an email notification, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about this I'll fall behind paradigm. I mean, the first thing I want to say is behind who?
Yeah, behind what?
Behind what? Like,
Yes.
Like, where are you in this line, and who drew the line?
Yes. And the opposite of that is, have you ever been ahead?
Well, how would you know you're ahead?
Exactly. And that's why we only look at the loss, so I'll fall behind. But it's like, have you ever felt like you were ahead of that? And it's usually no. And so that's
No.
how you know that you've actually always created a paradigm where you're always behind.
Yeah, actually believing that you will fall behind creates the existence of being behind.
Bingo.
If
Yeah.
you don't actually believe you're going to fall behind, there's no behind to fall into. Like you're
Yes.
just where you are.
Yeah.
Like there like okay, let's think of a movie being 90 minutes. Is the 30th minute behind the 90th minute?
Right.
No. Like it's just 30 minutes, and then you move forward and now you're at 35 minutes. Like you're just where you are, but you're not behind anything.
Yeah.
But if you believe you're behind while you're watching a movie, well then you need to like fast forward the movie.
Right. Watch it on 2x speed.
Yeah. Exactly.
I gotta keep up. I gotta keep up. Yeah, I think this belief also, maybe another way it shows up for you is believing that you've only got this one opportunity and you gotta get it now or else you're not gonna have it again. It's a very time scarcity thing. But it's also, I think the other half of this is the resting part, that resting is somehow bad. A lot of people have a fear of being perceived as lazy.
Yeah, well also the rest is bad because you perceive that you have such a little time.
Yes.
So if you have such little time, well then resting eats into the time.
Yeah.
And so the work is not to accept like your love for rest, although that comes later. It's really to look at your relationship to time. Because if you always need more time, well then you got to be really wise with your time usage, right? And we don't really see rest as being wise with our time.
Right.
We're like we
It's
need
not
to be
useful.
Yeah, we need to be effective and productive with our time, and resting is like wasting it, right? So why is everyone having such a scarcity relationship to time? I think it's because of lists like Forbes 30 under 30. I say that jokingly, but also seriously.
It's true.
Right? We really do think that we're just like worth nothing if we didn't do something before 30, which is crazy.
Okay, that's so funny because in my group call the other day, I mean, everyone's under 30, but a few of them are about to turn 30, and they were all just discussing about how how stressed they feel about making this last year so good.
No.
And I'm just laughing because I'm turning 40, right? And so, but I remember so clearly there's something about the 30th year that needs to be so impactful. And I think it's because when you're younger, you just think 30 is so goddamn old. Like I remember when my mom told me she was 32 and I was like, you're old. And now 32 is so young. Like you still have so much more life to live.
But like regardless of young and old, it's like that has nothing to do with this almost. It's like, what do you make it mean to have achieved something before or after a certain number?
This is what's so crazy. It's literally like it's a Tuesday. Like you're trying to get there by Tuesday. Like it's, this countdown to the birthday. I'm like, it's just a Tuesday. You have like 4 other Tuesdays in this month, but we're making this one mean so much more. And we can laugh about it now because we both like passed it. But I hope that you can also kind of almost poke fun at yourself if you're not 30 yet to actually just, I don't know, take the wind out of the sails of this fear that you're literally just fearing a day of the week.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Another way I worked around this was that anything that I thought was worth achieving, let's just say like, I want Spiraling Higher to be a #1 podcast. Will I still want that when I'm 50 years old? Yeah. Like, I think I'm going to still desire that. Then why does it matter what age I get it? Like, will I still want that at the end of my life? Sure. Right? What does it mean to have achieved that at 30, 35, 40? Like, are we discarding the achievements of 45-year-old people?
Totally.
People really admire the Colonel Sanders guy because he started the KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, I think in his 60s or 70s.
Yeah, like super late.
I think that was pretty awesome. Like, are we discarding that because he wasn't young? I don't know. Like, there's a lot of narrative that's actually relatively new. This wasn't actually a thing, I think, before 90s, early 2000s. But this idea of being like a really young, successful person, mainly because of all the stardom that we've like launched child stars into, right?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I think Justin Bieber was one of the first ones that
Britney was. I mean, she was like 15.
Britney was 6. Yeah.
16
Okay.
when she
Britney.
came
You're
out.
right. Britney,
Yeah.
Christina Aguilera, even the NSYNC people, and okay, yeah, I guess so. But I feel like before the 90s, we did not have child star celebrities.
Actually, we did.
Did
So
we?
Michael Jackson was super young.
Jackson 5.
Jackson 5. He was very young and he kind of
Right.
blew up. Like that Annie girl, and even Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, like she was,
Yes.
I think she was like 14. I read something about it and she was like, I don't know, they had her on a diet of cigarettes.
That's
and a
true.
bunch of
That's
stuff,
true. Judy Garland.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
true. But there wasn't as many.
No, and not
Like,
as a
she was
worldwide.
and she was an anomaly.
Yeah,
Like, she was a super young star.
Yeah.
But think of like a Marilyn Monroe. She was older, right?
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
Audrey Hepburn.
I think so. I don't know about those.
I
but-
don't know the exact ages, but they
But
weren't,
also
like,
they died a lot earlier. So
they did.
But
Yeah. They did.
I know what you're saying.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes.
There wasn't this like glorification of being like a young person who had a lot of money. And
Yeah.
if anything, the culture like didn't support that. Like, we actually thought it took a long time to become successful.
Mm-hmm.
So it was weird if people were like having a lot of money at a young age. Like,
Yes.
there were not a lot of avenues for that as much as there are now.
Yeah.
So this is great, obviously, that it's possible for young people or people of all ages to create income and to create service and art and all these things. I love that. But at a certain point, we started to believe that unless we were at like the upper echelon of creation and income and service, that like you became somehow super faulty. Like,
Yep.
and that's because we're seeing people on social media with like 100 million followers and we're like, what's wrong with me? Nothing. You're just not a celebrity. Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, look at like the Kylie Jenners of the world. It's like you're not a billionaire by the time you're like 20 something. It's like you don't have a private jet.
well, people would be comparing their lives to hers, and I'm like, guys, all respect, like mad love for people in those positions. Like, I'm not jealous or angry about it, but I'm just like, just look at the conditions they started with. Like,
100%.
I mean, we can't ignore that. But if you think that that's where you're supposed to be, of course you're always going to feel behind.
Yes. Yeah. And I think one of my favorite things that you always talk about with rest is how we're all working our asses off for retirement so we can rest. It's like,
I
let's
know.
work super hard so that once I get to 40, 50, 60, that I can like finally rest. It's like, but you can rest right now.
Yeah.
And then people say, but then I'll fall behind and I won't be able to rest later. But it's like, but you can just rest now.
Okay, so this actually happened with our past client, Cass, and I know that she won't mind us calling her out, like lovingly. But we actually explored this topic of retirement when we worked together 2 years ago, because it was like this, I need to hustle now so that I have enough money and enough of a nest egg, enough security in order to like chill for the rest of my years, right?
Yes.
And so we kind of first tackled this by thinking about retirement as a concept altogether. People don't realize that it's like not that old.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even been around 100 years. Like, we made it up.
Yeah.
Before that, people were actually merchants. You could call them merchants. Or what's another word for that? Whatever, vendors, right?
Yeah, vendors.
And they were dedicated to their craft, their work, and it wasn't something they tried to end early before they die. It was like something you kind of did like throughout your life.
Yeah.
So what we actually introduced to her as a paradigm was that the reason why she wants to hurry, hustle, gain enough time and money to rest later is because, number one, she doesn't like what she's doing. So we have to do it quickly. We have to get what we need from it so that we can actually end up doing what we want to be doing later.
Yeah, get in and get out.
Get in and get out. So what I actually ended up proposing, and this is so crazy because now she's left her corporate job and she is an entrepreneur. But I was like, what if we were able to identify and claim what you love to do now, and then it was a thing that you did easefully that you never wanted to retire from? And she was like, whoa. So like, find a thing I love that I don't need to escape doing, and then I just do it like at a pace that feels good for the rest of my days. And I was like, yes. We only need to go fast and hard and like get what we need out of a thing that we don't like, right? Or a thing that we're staking our self-worth and self-acceptance on. But like for this podcast, for example, I'm not trying to get to a place where I'm not doing this anymore.
Totally.
Like, imagine I'm like, all right, let's record 1,000 episodes and like I'm out of here. Like, then I get to like really chill and do the stuff I want to do. It's like, no, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to rush this experience. I like the pace that we're going at. And I also have never perceived an episode recording as being behind some arbitrary milestone.
Yeah. And I mean, even when we can record an episode, we're kind of like, that's okay.
Because we're not trying to get somewhere through it.
Exactly.
This is being somewhere through it.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're not trying to use the podcast to get somewhere else. And most people with the advent of retirement, they're trying to get somewhere through their job.
Yeah.
So I'll get what I need through my job, and then I will get whatever the object of my desire is: relaxation, freedom, liberation, joy, creativity, free time, right? But what if those were things you could grant yourself despite your job? Or maybe you can transition to doing something that feels more enjoyable to spend your time on, right? Why do you want so much free time? Right? Like, what do you want to do with it? Because I don't actually want a ton of free time these days. Like, what I'm doing with my time feels fulfilling. So I'm not like, I need more time to chill.
Yeah.
Right? I do take breaks throughout the day because I'm not trying to rush my way to success anymore. But think about why you need so much free time. Like, why would you even want to retire? Like, what are you trying to get away from? What is it that you want to experience instead? And how can you infuse some of that into your life now?
Yeah, really what you're speaking to, especially when it comes to us in this podcast, is like we're already at the part where we're doing what we want to do. Like, we've really created a life where we're doing the things that we would think we couldn't do until after we did the much harder things, which actually kind of goes to the belief of suffering before you can be happy.
Exactly.
And we just brought the happiness and the joy here. And so, yeah, I think also with Cass, one of the things that we really worked on together, we did like a whole breathwork kind of series of work together. And it was this belief of you can go slower to go faster. And it sounds so counterintuitive, but if you actually slow down enough to rest, to get to know yourself, to understand your body, to be able to listen to the calls of your body, if you can slow down enough to do that, you will be able to have more energy to do more of the things that you actually want to do. And what you'll actually uncover when you slow down enough is actually like what you actually want to do. I think we're going so fast, we're not even paying attention to if we're actually enjoying this. It would be kind of like trying to eat as fast as you can instead of deciding like, do you even want to eat this? It's like just trying to like inhale it all in instead of deciding, do I even like the taste of this? And realizing, wait, I can take my time to look at the menu. I can look and make my options. I don't even need to be in this restaurant. I can go into a different one. I can also make my own food. It's realizing that you actually have more options and you actually can't see those options often until you actually slow down. And so it's very much like an analogy of a car. You know, you can go really far and fast with a car and you can have your your foot on the pedal all the way. But you can actually go farther a lot of times if you drive slower and if you stop to like put the oil in and put the gas in. And, you know, something that we both always say is that resting really is the most productive thing you can do, even though we don't want to use the word productive often. But I think there's really nothing more honestly valuable than rest. Like, think about what happens when you sleep. I say this to Emma and my daughter all the time, that when you sleep, it's like when the kids are like growing and things are healing and things are, you know, settling, and it actually helps the body to grow and evolve more. If we're constantly in survival and we do not rest, the body like literally gets stunted. And so even in nature, in our bodies, like it needs to rest. If you look at even like plants, it's like they need not just sun all the time. They need to be in the darkness too. So yeah, it's all part of the cycle, guys.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that everyone knows that they need to rest. Like, that's a logical thought that occurs.
Yes.
But what's stronger is their need to feel accepted or loved or safe, right? That's obviously more safe. That's obviously more important than feeling rested.
Yes.
So what we have to challenge is not like their intelligence, because we know that they know that rest is important, but we need to really challenge this belief that they're going to fall behind and what that means for them. Like, what does fall behind even mean? Like, yes, initially we attacked this from the how do I say, the angle of like behind who, like the paradigm of like believing you are behind ensures that you are behind, all of that. But let's just say you do fall behind. Like, let's take that approach. Why is that bad? Like what does that mean? Like, let's say you did fall behind. Like, everyone is ahead of you now.
Yeah.
Right? What is the experience you're trying to avoid? Because that's the experience you need to actually accept.
Yes. Yes. But again, the worst case scenario potential.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to accept our worst case scenario or our hell, because otherwise we never get to heaven, which is peace on earth, not a place that I think you go after you die, because your fear of hell keeps you in hell.
Yeah.
Like, you literally can't get to heaven as long as you have a fear of hell. The way you get to heaven is through accepting that even if my doomed hell occurs, I fall behind, I'll be okay. I will accept that.
Yeah.
I will learn how to dance with that.
Yeah, the avoidance of the hell is the hell.
Yes, the fear of the hell is hell.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually ever experience this hell. Like, no one ever says, you have officially fallen behind. It's over for you, right? Your fear of the falling behind is the hell of falling behind.
Yes. It's a self-created prison.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked that.
Next. I'm not ready yet. Gina just rolled her eyes.
Because of how real this one feels and how many times we hear it, how many times I've thought it. I don't know if you've thought it. Have you?
No, I mean, I have, but here's the thing. I've never been ready for a damn thing in my life. Like,
but is it something that you've like struggled with? I'm trying to think. Like, I want to say, okay, I mean, I think the only thing that I've ever really experienced you being maybe newbie in, and not like, I mean, actually you did crush it right away. But in real estate, when we started working together, there's definitely a sense of like, I'm not ready to like, I don't know, take on this listing.
No,
you
definitely.
Yeah, so I remember that. But that feels a little bit more, I don't know, because there is a sense of maybe you aren't actually ready to take off the training wheels off your bike. So maybe there is an actual real not being ready. But I think what we're speaking to is more a perceived sense of not being ready, this very arbitrary sense of not being ready. And I love what you said, though, is that no one's ever ready. Like, people actually say this to me all the time when it comes to having a baby. Like, oh, like, I'm not ready to have a baby. It's like, no one is. No one is. And especially the people who think they are not ready.
Prepared for an unknown experience you never had before?
Yeah,
interesting.
Totally. Like, how can you be ready for that? So again, unpacking, what does ready even mean? How would you know that you're ready? Most people say, when I'm good at it. And I'm like, oh, so you mean after you've done it like a lot of times, then you're ready? But you could never get there if you never start.
Yep.
Right? So what you're actually saying is that the only time that I could be ready is if I've done the thing for many, many years and I've become an expert and a master at this thing, which I would never experience if I never started. And so I think there is this illusory belief that people are ready and they're just not.
Yeah, well, sometimes this I'm not ready yet shows up a lot for people where they're like, "Oh, I need to like learn more first," or like I need to
Yeah.
like be certified, or I need to do X before I can. And what I'm curious about is not how to get them to do that thing so that they can feel ready, but is what is doing that thing going to allow you to think about yourself that will prepare you for readiness, right?
Yeah.
And often it's basically that they can access the belief that they're allowed to share their thoughts, or like that what they have to say is valuable now
Yes.
because they got certified, or because they finished this whatever set of modules or course that verifies all of their insights, right? But what if you didn't need to do the course? I'm not saying don't do courses, right? That's totally fine if that's within your whatever set of desires. I have done many courses. But are you doing the courses to access the belief that what you have to say is valuable, or what you're offering is valuable? Interesting. We can observe that, because then you need to take another course after the one that you finish, right? Or can the work be to now consider that what you have to say or offer is already valuable because it's truth, right? Whatever you've experienced up until this point that is inspiring you to say something or offer something is based on your true lived experience. Can that be valuable? And that can be valuable prior to doing a course, prior to getting a certification, prior to whatever arbitrary set of things you believe you need to complete before you can do it. And that's kind of what we wanted to get to the heart of, because that sense of readiness is really only you believing that what you have to say or share is worth sharing.
Yeah, and the funny thing is you can try. You can go and take the course and then see how you feel about sharing, because I
Yeah.
can almost guarantee that you'll still feel like you're not ready.
Yeah, because
Then
you
you're
need the
gonna be like,
belief.
yeah,
You
because
need
then you're going to be like, oh, well, I need to practice this more often, or I need to have like more test people to work on first before I can talk about this thing. And so it's never going to be, no matter how much education you get, that you're going to start to feel ready. Once again, that is going to be an internal thing. It's not
Yeah.
an external thing. You could take 10 years of courses and still not feel ready to share about that. And so that's how you know it's, again, arbitrary. So like Sam said, it's not about not taking these courses, but what are you making them mean, and what are you staking on them? If you're trying to
Yes.
stake your self-worth on having a certification and your ability to share with people, no, it's you're still going to continue to feel unready, and if anything, you'll feel worse, because
Yeah.
you're going to be like, "Wow, I'm certified, and I still don't feel like I can talk about this or share this." And that's what's so funny. So many people, I feel, in our world, want to share more about their spiritual journey and the things that they've learned, but they think, who am I to talk about this?
A person?
But exactly, I'm like, who are you not to share that? Like, it's your real life experience. There is no, master's degree in your life. If there was one, you'd have it, because you're the only one who's living it.
You're a master of your own life.
Yes, and so you get to share about your lived experience, and that inherently is valuable because, as you said, it's truth, and that's actually what people resonate with, not the perfectly curated paragraph from a textbook. They're going to resonate with your story, your version, your lived experience, your perspective. And so, yeah, just really ask yourself, if you feel like you're not ready, like, when would you be? And again, in saying this, I do want to, I do maybe think I'm trying to think, are there things that you wouldn't be ready for? Like, I guess I'm thinking about actual skill things. Like, with the training wheels on a bike, you might actually not be ready to ride it without the training wheels.
Okay, but now you're talking about physical, like, body-based tasks.
Yes.
Right?
So that's separate. We're more talking about,
Yeah, like for example, if I broke my leg and I like want to go for a run, might not be ready for that, right?
Yes.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about
I wanted to
taking
clarify
actions.
that.
Yes,
Yes.
taking
Okay,
actions.
good.
And just to kind of seal this, yeah, I think it's not about your education, of course, that's going to make you feel ready, or any sort of completion of steps that you have set for yourself, but it is being able to access the belief that what you are about to do is worth doing.
Yes, and how you're going to feel and think about yourself. Because if you're planning on starting a YouTube channel but you don't feel ready, what you're actually really saying is that I can't love and accept myself as I try this thing.
Yeah, or it's not worth doing because
Yes.
I don't believe in what I'm offering.
Yeah.
But if you believe in the value of your life experiences, then there's nothing to be ready for.
Bingo.
There's nothing to be ready for. Like the non-readiness is just a sign that you don't value yourself yet. That's it. As soon as you value yourself, there you go, ready.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even call it ready. You just start.
Yeah.
You're not like, I'm ready now.
You're just not in resistance.
You just don't
to
have
it.
the block.
Yes.
Right? The block sounds like I'm not ready, but readiness is not actually the cure because it continues to perpetuate that you were never ready for at the first place.
Exactly.
But to value what you have to say and do is to delete readiness from the equation. Like you don't need to be ready to value what you say and do.
Yeah. Yeah. You actually don't need to be ready to like start a YouTube channel or to start posting about stuff that you want to talk about. You don't have to be ready for that.
You just need to have an intention and believe that it's worth it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This is our final one for today. And this one causes so much resistance. And I can't even believe how much I suffered with this. And sometimes I still do to this day. Absolutely. It's a pattern. But it sounds a little bit like this. I should have known better. Or if I hadn't of X, this wouldn't be happening. I wouldn't be in this situation, right? This is where we blame our current situation for an action that we took in the past, which leaves us completely effing powerless because now we need a time machine to change how we feel.
Yes.
But when we realize that it's not the events of the past that cause us to feel this way, but our current perception of that event that's causing us to feel that way, now we're empowered because it's not that that thing needed to not happen. It's that we need to accept that it happened.
Yes.
And potentially offer ourselves a more positive twist on the thing that happened, right? Eckhart Tolle always says good and bad can't exist because they're naturally temporal. As in, a thing that you thought was really bad when it happened, some months, years later, you're like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Was it ever bad? Was it ever good? Only our perception makes it so. So us thinking that something shouldn't have happened, creates the experience of regret, resistance, guilt, shame, all the things we don't want to feel, right? But we don't have to change what happened. Thank God, right? We can just think differently about what has happened or what is happening. And that's actually the only way through.
That's the only thing you can do. And it's the only thing that works. So
It's the only thing that works. I had a client yesterday who was telling me a little bit about how there was some situation in which a friend offered to do her a favor. And she was like, I don't know, like, no, I don't want you to worry about it. And then the friend was like super insistent. And one of the things that she's been working on, my client, is accepting help from others. So this is her pattern to be like, no, it's okay. But she was like, you know what? I am going to, accept the person's offer. So she did. And they went about doing the thing that had been offered, and it didn't work out the way that she had expected or planned and hoped. And then she was beating herself up because she was like, see, I shouldn't have accepted the favor. Like I should have listened to myself. And she was like, what can I do? Right? When like people say they're going to do something and then they don't. And I'm like, okay, you're in this coaching container, not her. So we're not going to talk about her.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how you are blaming yourself for the thing that happened. Notice that. Like she did a thing, right, that didn't meet your expectations, but you're here getting mad at you.
Wow.
And that's causing all of your feelings. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting mad at myself. But really, like, that was on her to do. And I could just maybe accept my disappointment about that. And I'm like, yeah. And so that's the thing. When we say I should have known better or this shouldn't be happening, what we're really trying to avoid is our disappointment.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always those feelings underneath because, you know, it's this sense of like you said, regret and like maybe some anger, maybe just like this frustration. But underneath that, as you said, is this deep disappointment, which is actually like so much softer. And if we could just be allowed to be disappointed and be with that emotion and feeling instead of like being mad at ourselves, like just that in and of itself would be so healing, but again, hard to actually embody and do. But yeah, I should have known better. Another way that this shows up in this healing journey is once you've recognized a pattern and you've maybe had a breakthrough and you've really integrated something really major, and then you do the pattern again. And then we can be mad at ourselves like I know better than this. I already know all of this stuff. A lot of our clients are actually quite self-aware and have done this work for a while. So a lot of times what we hear in our containers is, I already know this stuff, and I already learned this lesson, and I know I'm kicking myself for going through this again, or why am I still struggling with this? And honestly, we both do this still. But to argue with what is what creates the suffering. And so bringing up Eckhart again, Eckhart Tolle also always says that you know that what's happening right now is meant to be because it's happening right now. Like, this is what's happening. So this is what's meant to be. This is it. And so to argue with it and to say anything along the lines of should be this, should have done that, shouldn't have done this, that is you focusing ultimately on the wrong part of this, right? Instead of focusing on what you could or should have done, what can you do now?
Yeah, and trying to change what happened or resist what happened. I ask my clients a lot, like, what if we just accepted that this did happen? What would you have to feel? And they're always like,
Exactly.
it's always like something that they're not aware that they were trying to get away from. So
Yeah.
usually it's the disappointment, or sometimes it's just like sadness. They're just like, I'm just like sad. And I'm like, okay, can we accept that? Because when the sadness or the disappointment feels so distressing, or maybe we weren't modeled that that was okay to experience, right? We're not accepting ourselves in that emotion. Well, then, yeah, now we have to like figure out a way for it to be not happening. And then we fixate on like what we did or what we said. But we're literally launching ourselves into our minds at that point because we've left the present moment. We're thinking about the past
Yes.
now. And it's actually peace. It's actually peace that we want, and peace is felt when we leave our minds. And so we have to accept the events as they were in order to be in the present moment and feel the peace that we want.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that concept can be really hard because we do get really deeply rooted into the belief that I would just feel so much better if that didn't happen, though. But it's like, but the feeling that you feel like you believe you could have, like you could also have that now. It's again this very scarce mentality that you can only feel that feeling in that context with that specific thing. But we actually can experience peace, love, joy in so many different avenues. I'm trying to think of another example of how this might show up. Like I should have known better. I mean, I would say it does come up a lot in parenting, maybe. Like, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done this. I should have known better to not, let her do this, or I should have known better to not react that way.
Well, I think rather than focusing on all the different ways in which we say this, I would just get curious for everyone listening. Next time you hear yourself say it, can you redirect it and create this new neural pathway slowly by saying, oh, next time I know that I'm going to blank.
Exactly.
Or
And
now I know that I can blank. It doesn't need
yes.
to be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, next time I know to say this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the same thing with the parenting example. Instead of saying like I shouldn't have done this, it's now I know next time how I might want to actually approach this differently. It just like again, like you have multiple opportunities. You can
Right.
try again. You can keep trying. But yeah, I'm trying to think of another maybe way that it might show up in people's minds. But I think that this one's pretty clear. I think a lot of us have that thought. Anytime you hear the word should have, again, it does insinuate that you're actually not in the present. And anytime
Yeah.
we leave the present is when we are kind of dragging the past into the present, which you can't even do anyway, but you are just creating so much suffering and bringing the
Yes.
painful emotions of the past instead of just the wisdom of it. Because we can actually look at that very neutrally and just see, you know what? Yeah, I can see that, maybe in this moment I would have maybe reacted differently or chosen a different option. And I'm so glad I know that now. Like it really
Yeah.
can be that. It's your own
Yeah.
judgment of it that's creating the pain.
Yeah, and this also comes back to the whole punishment paradigm,
Yeah.
which is that we need to punish ourselves for what happened instead of just accepting what happened. Because I think we think that if we don't guilt ourselves and shame ourselves and just say, oh, okay, well, next time I know better, it feels like we're getting away with something.
Totally. It's like the time has to match the crime. Like we should punish ourselves as long as that thing went on. But yeah, it is a punishment thing for sure. Like we can't let ourselves get away with it because we think we're not going to learn. But it's actually punishing yourself that
Keeps you from learning. Yes. I had to learn that. And I had to actually witness it in other people first in order to stop doing it. I actually noticed my mom doing it to herself, like being really mean to herself, like whenever she would do something and punish herself. And I could just see like, well, that's not going to help. Like,
yeah.
Like, that's so clearly not going to help, right? It keeps
Mm-hmm.
you steeped in the negative emotion.
Yeah.
And so the only way to actually ensure that this thing happens less, which is probably what you want to experience, is to accept it in yourself for having created or been a part of that experience, and take the wisdom, leave the pain.
Take the wisdom, leave the pain. So maybe a more kind of a different analogy you can maybe look at this through is, let's just say you pick up a plate and then you drop it and it shatters. If you just stand there and say, I shouldn't have dropped it, I shouldn't have picked it up like that, and I shouldn't have dropped it, instead of just picking up the pieces and cleaning up, like you can see in that example, you're just elongating the problem. Because now if you actually leave the shattered glass on the ground, someone could walk on it, like you could get maybe hurt more. You're actually just elongating the solution to that, which would just be accepting, I did break this, let me pick it up. Maybe next time I won't, I don't know, touch oil before I pick up this thing. You can just learn from it, as you said.
But it's also so limiting to think that it's bad that you broke it, right?
Exactly,
Because
yeah.
sometimes I think about it, like, why did you create this? Like, why did you break this? Maybe it was so that you could walk to the store and get a new plate and like experience like a new sign, or like meet someone on the way. Like, I think it's so limiting to think that something is immediately bad and wrong for happening.
100%.
And so that's also what you're reinforcing when you say, I should have known better, or this shouldn't have happened. You are saying that it was bad.
Yeah.
But it might not have been. And if you can open your mind to consider different possibilities, then you don't need to change and reject what happened. Like, it could have been a portal to something else.
Oh, I love that you said that, because it reminds me of something Abraham Hicks talked about in one of their videos. And Esther, she like was cleaning her shelf, and it was this very special shelf with like multiple things that they've collected over the years from different places, memories. It's a very, important shelf to them. The whole thing fell over and everything broke. And she was stressing out, but then I think Jerry, maybe it was Esther too, was kind of like, oh, goody, we get to buy more things. We get to look for more things that we get to collect over the years as we continue to travel. And when I heard that, I was like, wow. In that moment, I think I would be freaking out, like, oh, I shouldn't have like used this duster thing, or like I shouldn't have like touched that. I knew I should have just like left it as is, instead of seeing it as an opportunity. Like, what else could this offer us? And so I love that you shared that, because we do look so in such a limiting lens that's like so microscopic, instead of being like, wait, we can look at the whole universe of unlimited potentials of what else this could lead to.
Yeah.
So good.
Exactly. I'm so glad we got to talk about this and share with you all some of the most common limiting beliefs that we hear day in and day out. And I will never get sick of talking about these beliefs, because getting curious about our inner world is how we experience more self-liberation, joy, freedom, expression. And I really think it's the only way to experience the lives that we desire, because the lives that we desire are not actually external, they're internal.
Yeah.
Right? We desire to feel internally fulfilled. We desire to feel deeply loved. And these are inner experiences that are the result of our deep-seated beliefs and the state of being they create. And so by doing this work, whether you're doing this by listening to the podcast, you're doing your own practice, you are cracking the code and unlocking the keys to the inner kingdom. What did actually they call it in Christianity? They said the kingdom of heaven? Is that what it's called?
I think they say kingdom of God.
Kingdom of God. Yeah. Well, what they meant was basically self-acceptance and love.
Yeah.
To experience the light of your being. And that is definitely the result of all of this inner work. So if you're listening to this podcast, you are doing the inner work, and we are so proud of you. And we can't wait to hear with you and continue this dialogue. So make sure to join us inside of the free Spiraling Higher community, where we host free connection calls at the end of every single month. We're also planning on adding more juicy offerings to our community.
Yeah, we're in creation and brainstorming mode, and it's been so fun. We cannot wait to share with you all what we have planned. So yeah, join the community. Also engage with us on social. We love to hear about your thoughts and takeaways from each episode. Actually, a lot of people have been commenting on our YouTube videos, which has been really fun to read as well. So yeah.
We'll see you there. And guess what? We're not ready. We just have an intention and believe it's worth doing.
Yes. I love it.
So we'll see you inside of the community. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.